shake, rattle, and troll.
It's time for the award-winning Shake, Rattle, and Troll.
Yeah, here's the one that grab your favorite pole. Me and the boys gonna shake.
A show for the serious fishermen as well as the novice looking for tips from the pros. Shake, Rattle, and Troll, brought to you by Bill Lute Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram. I-17 and Camelback Road since 1927.
Yeah, we got the power, we got the speed. We're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Freshwater, saltwater, watch out, boys. Bass Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. Me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, Don McDowell.
Yeah, man. Hey, I'm Don McDowell. Welcome to Shake, Rattle, and Troll this morning. Hope you're having a good day. There's not a weed eater involved in your day. We've got a lot of information to pass along to you. I've got some good news. JK is not in the house. He is on a golf course. I am absolutely stunned. But he's got the legs for wearing knickers. Awesome job, John. Good luck, buddy. And special guest today, we're honored to have the highest ranking official that we have had in 15 years of being live on the air, Director Larry Voiles, from AZGFD, Arizona Game and Fish Department. Director, welcome. We're honored to have you, sir.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
I appreciate you coming down. You know, Sunday mornings, I wouldn't know what to do. We've been doing this for about 15 years now, and every once in a while you get diverted, and even in the woods, you start looking around for a microphone, start talking into a shotgun shell, so it's force of habit.
I can understand how that can happen.
We've got awful lot of stuff going on in the state, in the Southwest. We've got a great state, and on the wildlife front, I think Arizona Game and Fish right now is probably the strongest I've ever seen it. We've got an awful lot of good people. We've had a number of folks from Game and Fish on the program over the years, and there's not a single one of them that you can't pack on the back and understand their job is not just a job. It's a way they live. It's a life. It's a total commitment. It's a compassion, if you will. And I've said it a number of times, and I think it's worth repeating. I wish that John Q. Public or Joe the Plumber, depending on who's running for office that year, could know the department people as we do that work side by side of these guys and girls. And it's just you're doing a heck of a job up there. It's kind of like being mayor of Glendale with so many people up there, isn't it?
You know, it's really a little bit more like being part of a fabulous team of people. And part of the reason that team's so good is because of the folks we get to work with, the people who are passionate about conservation, hunting, and fishing, and the outdoor sports are some of the finest folks in the world. And we get to work with those folks every day, trying to deliver conservation on the ground. And, it's all of our people, I think, see it as a blessing and something that it's a way of life, and it's tied to the way of life of Americans. And I think we all feel we've got a special opportunity to be able to do what we do.
Well, I think, not that I want to quote the Clintons, but it kind of takes a village to run our fish and wildlife here in the state. We've got some challenges moving ahead into 2015. We can talk about a little bit. But how many people do we have now at the department? I had heard 654 plus or minus.
I think it's about 644, but it's right at that 650 realm with the department right now. And that's a pretty good bunch of people.
That's a whole lot of trucks.
It is. It is, exactly. And, we've got one of the strongest, I think, workforces in terms of the talent we've got. Those people include some highly educated folks that I think we've got over 250 people with wildlife biology degrees or fisheries degrees.
Wow.
Of those, there's well over 200 have advanced degrees, and That's pretty strong. We've got 21 PhDs that work in the wildlife sciences on behalf of Arizona's people. So,
wow, I didn't know that. I hadn't even considered that. That's
yeah, it's
pretty impressive.
It really is. It's quite a group.
Working hand in hand with the department, I think this past couple of years we've just had a tremendous strength in the commission. How do you feel about that?
This is one of the best commissions, I think, that we've had in decades. They're all focused on the conservation of Arizona's wildlife. And a lot of people, talk about this bent or that bent, but the thing is, they are by statute supposed to be focused on taking care of Arizona's wildlife for Arizona's citizenry, and to a person, they all are focused. That is their first concern: is what is best for the welfare of wildlife in Arizona. And I think they're one heck of a strong commission.
Well, I think that's a total commitment on their part. First of all, it's not a paid operation that they're conducting. It's a volunteer and pretty darn demanding, actually. With all the stuff that's going on.
Well, they I like to poke fun at them because they work for free.
There's so much to work with, poking fun at them. Okay,
that's true. But they draw no salary, and it is a full-time job. They travel the entire state, meeting with constituents, delving into issues, and their phones ring 24/7, and they always answer. There's very few people really understand how much they give of themselves, and they're dealing with very difficult, challenging issues where there are opinions on all sides.
Ooh, absolutely.
But they've chosen to step into the fray and make a difference. And my hat's off to all five of them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your stint with the department. You started how many years ago?
40 years ago. It was 40 years ago this last October that I started with the agency. I started as a district wildlife manager.
That means you had a badge and a gun?
Had a badge and a gun. And a biology degree. Our district wildlife managers do. They have a district that'll range anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 square miles. And they do everything in there. Wildlife management, fisheries management. They're all biologists by training, and they're all fully sworn. They go to the Arizona Law Enforcement Academy and are certified peace officers, and they enforce the wildlife laws, do the public affairs work, everything.
On that note, how much authority do they actually have? I've had discussions with DPS, which is our supreme authority statewide, jurisdictionally. Do our WMs rank right up there with them?
Same level of authority. They've got the same certification as a DPS officer.
Yikes.
Exactly.
That's pretty impressive. Well, these guys, I know a lot of these guys well. Kenny Dinkwell comes to mind. Kenny is a wonderful guy, and he and I have had pointed discussions on how do you do what you do. You're out there by yourself. Backup might be 2, 3, 4 hours away, and you've got to go into a camp of would-be poachers. Everybody's got guns. There's probably alcohol involved. Wow.
I think those wildlife managers have some of the greatest human skills you will ever see in working with people. And they do have to be self-reliant. They know how to work on their own. And they have to have incredibly good judgment, and every one of them does.
Impressive. How much law enforcement training do they get with the academy?
I'm dipping back into
Roughly,
memory banks, but I'm thinking that they have about 14 weeks with the academy, and then when they come out, we put them through a post-academy training. It's basically a year-long program, getting them from when they come out of the university, come to work for us. It's about a year of prep before they're really ready to fly on their own.
Do they have a certain period of time when they have on-the-job training, right along program?
You bet. We've got a real structured field training program where they ride with some of the best, most tenured officers. and they're coached and evaluated in a pretty structured format as they begin to transition to being able to operate on their own in the district.
Recently, Director, we lost what's actually turned out to be a good friend, Brian Wakeling.
Yeah.
Sorry to see him go. He's sorely missed. What a great guy. But I'm sure he'll do a good job for the deer up in Nevada. So might be a hunting opportunity there at some point.
I suspect he'll do the same kind of job he did here. He'll take that on up to Nevada, and they'll be the beneficiaries. It was good for Brian. He was able to retire after an illustrious career with us, and it was good for Nevada because they got a good man.
I know there's been some discussions of a new branch chief. Is there any information on that you can share with us?
Not yet.
Okay. That's going to be a pretty important seat, and I'm sure a lot of eyes will be looking at that.
Absolutely a critical seat. That's the heart and soul.
When do you expect to have a new big game chief seated?
I'm hoping that we'll have some idea within the end of the month, or by the end of the year anyway. We should have something pretty.
Boy, that's right around the corner, the way time's flying these days.
Yep.
It's all good. When we come back, I want to kind of visit with some of the other issues. We have the Willow Beach thing that's been a big deal. It seems like our congressmen and senators have been involved. I know you've been involved, but straight away when we come back, more with Director of Oils. I'm Don McDowell. We'll be back.
On that side of the law, who is right, who is wrong, who is for and who's against the law? Well, you see, the preacher man says it's the end of time, and the Mississippi River, she's a going dry. The interest is up and the stock market's...
All righty, we're back visiting with his directorship. Larry Boyle, that's the correct term, correct? His directorship?
And I'm not too sure about that.
Come on now. Work with me. It's early Sunday morning.
That it is.
Director, aside from directing the Arizona Game and Fish Department with almost 650 employees and folks under your command, you've got some other agencies that you're working with, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and so on. Kind of give us a rundown. How does that apply to the department? What does that mean to Arizona politically? We're fighting some issues on states' rights to be able to manage fish and wildlife, especially under the ESA, under Section 6, and we can talk more about that after a while. But some of these agencies are pretty key.
Well, absolutely. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies was established in 1902, and a lot of people don't realize it's 112 years old now. And its membership is the 50 state wildlife agencies, the Canadian provinces, and the territorial governments.
I wasn't aware the Canadians were involved in that. Wow.
Yes, yeah, it's all of North America and the various protectorates of the United States government around the globe. So it's a significant group. It is the voice of the state fish and wildlife agencies, and a lot of people outside our world don't realize the degree to which the relationship between hunters and anglers who fund conservation, the industries that relate to hunting and fishing, and the state wildlife agencies work in partnership, integrated together. That association is what enables the 50 state wildlife agencies to operate like one coherent conservation machine. And I stepped in as president in September of the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. And that's enabled us to kind of refocus the association on issues that are in the West. We're worried about issues everywhere, but for the last few years, there's been a little bit more of a focus on Eastern issues, and now we're starting to look at some of the challenges we have with broad public-owned landscapes, federally owned landscapes in the West, and how that affects our ability to provide conservation and hunting and fishing opportunities for folks out here in the West.
Having said that, what's paramount on your mind? you're right. We have a lot of key issues. We've got the Department of Interior, EPA, the Fish and Wildlife Service. These guys are on steroids, in my opinion, running without firm direction. Maybe for another 2 years we can rein that in. But what do you see as the most crucial at this point?
Well, I think at this point, for me, the most crucial thing is that people understand that the reason we have the diverse wildlife and abundance we've got in North America, which is the best in the world, is the North American model of conservation. And that's that relationship between hunters, anglers, and the state wildlife agencies, and the relationship with the federal government. It's a balanced relationship historically under a federalism concept, which federalism is a shared relationship between the states and the federal government. We think that's gotten a little out of balance, and the ability for your state wildlife agencies to do the conservation work they do, your ability to access your public landscapes, are all critical if we're going to have the kind of conservation in the future we had in the past. Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies is going to be focused very hard on reestablishing that balance that historically existed and provided the kind of wildlife diversity.
Are they working hand in hand with the folks in Washington, especially our senators and congressmen?
Absolutely. That's their purpose, their main role. They were created out of a concern at the turn of the century for that balance between the federal government and the states. And they work very diligently on the Hill with our congressmen. They work also with the administrative branch of government, and they advocate to ensure that the state's authorities for managing fish and wildlife resources are paramount in any kind of federal legislation that comes out.
In your opinion, are the elected representatives that we have doing their job as far as the congressmen? We've interacted with several. We find two out of the bunch that are really in the trenches digging on natural resources and wildlife issues, along with Senator McCain. How about the rest of the folks?
Well, they've got a big job. They've got a lot of things that are front and center in their world. I think it's one of my responsibilities, working with the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, to help them understand just how critical how they approach wildlife is. The Endangered Species Act creates so much power and control over western landscapes that it affects everything we do. Our water comes off the federal lands, and we all need water. It's the lifeblood of the West. And so these wildlife issues are more than just about hunting and fishing. And it's our job, my job, working with the association to try and elevate that in their eyes and really try and hone their concern that they need this balanced approach. The states provide 2.5 times more dollars for conservation than the Fish and Wildlife Service. They need to understand it's not just about turning to their federal agency that they have direct connection with. It's also about maintaining the ability of the states to do their job.
Well, it seems to me it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, trying to put the puzzle together without if you don't have the clear vision of what the puzzle is supposed to look like, you're not going to get it.
That's a really good description. And that puzzle was designed by our forefathers. I mean, it's fundamental to the way our governmental system's constructed. So we've got the model. We just need to pay attention and remember what it was intended to be.
Well, I'm pleased to say we've worked hand in hand with Congressman Matt Salmon. Paul Gosar, I know, has been up the lake, Lake Pleasant, looking into aquatic invasive species, the quagga mussels, if you were, and how you track and tie that back into Washington on AIS. It's a big deal in my mind. Water issues and contaminants within the water. We've got the gizzard shad that who knows how they got here, but we're looking into that. We've got stripers, we've got this and that, and it's just like every time we turn around, we've got some different type of a infestation that came from someplace else that we're having to deal with that has major consequences on water issues. As an example, the last time I checked, Hoover Dam, as an example, had a $14 million budget related cleaning issues with quagga mussels. Who would have thunk that?
You're making a really good point, because a lot of people think of aquatic invasive species as that's the Wildlife Agency's issue. It's all of society's issue.
Absolutely.
When my wife's a travel agent, and at one time I got to tag along on a trip when she took a bunch of people to New Zealand. We stepped off the plane and there was a dog there sniffing our luggage looking for seeds. Any invasive species. You bet. That's how important it is to them. It's a national agenda there. It's not just a wildlife agency issue. Their customs service is focused on it.
All righty, hold that thought, because I want to know New Zealand. I'm thinking of fly rod, long gun, center fire. Wow. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Honeysuckle and it's still so sweet. Deep inside, I never learned.
All righty, we're back. Before the break, director was talking about following his wife to New Zealand. I get it about the seed sniffing dogs, but did you get to fish? Did you get to hunt? Come on, director.
I actually got to sneak over there a little ahead of the group. She had me working for her and had me taking care of about 87 people. So I got to sneak over ahead and fish for sea run browns.
Wow.
And that was a hoot. It was more like hunting almost. You'd stalk them from up on the ridges and
well, that's a world-class opportunity right there.
Absolutely, absolutely, and something I would have never been able to do if I hadn't married a gal that had a job that took me there.
Nice.
So it was neat.
How about the red stag? Did you get to spot and stalk on those boys?
I did not get to do any hunting on that.
That'd be tough.
Yeah, I got to meet some people that ran those operations. And that made it even tougher because they told me what I was missing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm trying to, I have, like everybody else, I have a bucket list. That's about third in line on my bucket list right there.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to have in a bucket list.
Yes, I do. Looking forward to do that, albeit one of the fundraisers we went to, there was a ADA and Antelope Association dinner, and we ended up with a trip to Botswana land in South Africa. So, as soon as somebody convinces me, which may be very difficult to do, that they have this Ebola thing under control, we're gone. So,
and that's another bucket list thing for me someday, but I haven't been there, but I'd like to go.
Well, it's an opportunity. We had 3 people, 3 animals apiece. That'd be my brother over here, that he's pretty good with the slingshot. We're trying to move him into center fires, and my son. So that should be just a wonderful experience.
That'll be a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, gotta hurry. Some of the other things that you're working on, the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. How does that vary in nature from the other one?
Well, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies represents all the state and territorial and provincial wildlife agencies in North America. Western Association is a group that represents the western states and is focused on our western issues and really advocates for conservation here in the West. They're affiliated with the National Association. But they're their own entity. They don't answer to the National Association, and they advocate for the Western issues. And so our agency is very active with the Western Association and very involved in integrating conservation across the Western landscapes. A lot of people think, state wildlife agencies can't do landscape scale conservation because they're just in one state. Nothing's further from the truth. We actually deliver continental scale conservation because we coordinate and cooperate so closely with each other through these associations.
That's a good thing. That's real similar to what I found with BASS. In fact, in talking with Gene Gilliland that took over National Conservation Director with Noreen Clow, I talked to him last week. He said, yes, I was working with your director in Washington on some issues, and he extends his regards.
Well, thank you.
We're bringing Gene in once or twice a month as he travels the country to talk about some of the different issues that we have. Because I think we have 41 different conservation directors. Every other month we have a conservation director conference call, and it's amazing. We all, even though we're in different areas, break it down to different regions and different parts of the country, there's a commonality like you're talking about, but we have, as an example, we don't have enough habitat in the water. Very, very few aquatic nuisance issues. And then you talk to the boys back in Alabama, they want to ship you some. They've got too much. So, it just, we're talking about 5 different state CDs on our gizzard shad. I know Chris Cantrell is our new fisheries branch chief, doing a great job. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, we're doing information sharing. We put out a call. Okay, if you've got gizzard shad and know anything about it, raise your hand. And doing some other things with Florida on the Florida strain bass and on and on and on. And it just seems to be just a huge symbiotic relationship with the other states. It's from on a private sector point.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and there's a parallel pathway with the state wildlife agencies. We work closely with Florida, and, the private sector relationships facilitate that. And I think our state relationships facilitate your private sector coordination. And, the 500,000 Florida strain bass we were able to stock into Roosevelt Lake to try and counteract some of the problems we have had with gizzard shad, I think is an example of how important those relationships across the country are.
Well, that gizzard shad, we've got a new list, species of mass destruction, and that kind of tops the list for Arizona. And what's interesting is you talk to some guys in Oklahoma, they have gizzard shad, but they don't have the problem with gizzard shad that we do. We have an environment that grows gizzard shad on steroids for some reason, and I'm still not quite tracking on it yet.
Yeah, I think that we've got a lot to learn, but I think by looking at those systems where they do have a different dynamic, maybe we can learn a little bit about how we can manage this issue too. So.
It's coming, and Cantrell's doing a great job. What some of the issues the Western States Association is fighting? What's key on their hit list moving into 2015?
Well, they're really working heavily on the issue of endangered species and how that endangered species management encroaches on the ability of the states to do their work. There's a lot of focus on western sage grouse. The potential for listing sage grouse is looming.
That's become quite a national battlefront.
Well, it affects broad landscapes across the West, the grasslands across the West, where the sage grouse habitats affect so many states. Arizona's not a sage grouse state, but we're one of the few western states that don't have sage grouse, and so it's affecting all of those states. So we've also crafted a really historic agreement and effort to manage the lesser prairie chicken, which has been listed, working closely with industry. Industry's provided about $40 million into a conservation fund.
Wow.
It's a multi-state effort. And the Western Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies is managing that effort under agreements with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's probably the biggest interstate effort of its kind ever, and we're plowing some new ground.
What happens hypothetically if we're up on the strip and go, oh my gosh, a sage grouse.
Well, we'd like to know about it. Give us a call. But I don't think that's likely to happen. But, it's possible.
Yeah, we didn't think we were going to have timberwolves up on the Kaibab either.
That's right. And they don't fly. So, with wildlife, I never say never. You just don't know where.
Strange things go on in the wildlife front. How crucial is this? I don't want this to be a overly complicated question, but we just had our state election. We have new governor Doug Ducey. We have Mark Brnovich as our new AG. In moving forward and talking with both those gentlemen, they seem to have a comprehensive understanding of some of our natural resource issues. We've talked specifically about trying to regain some of our state's rights for the department to manage fish and wildlife. What's your vision with these guys moving into 2015 and your other two associations?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's important that we work closely with them so that they can understand the integrated role that wildlife conservation plays in protecting the state's interests in how we manage lands and resources. I was really pleased when Governor Brewer came into office. I don't think wildlife was her first focus, but her team quickly recognized the critical role that an effective state wildlife agency plays in her vision of the renewed federalism, meaning balancing that role of the states. And I think it's important to help that we work with the new leadership to keep that alive, because how we do wildlife conservation has a lot to do with our access to water, how we can access our public lands, everything that goes with living in the West. So we need to work closely with this new leadership, and I think they've got the right philosophical foundations to be a positive force for wildlife.
I do too, especially coupled with a couple of the game commissioners.
Absolutely, I think this commission will work extremely well with the new leadership.
Cool. All right, having said that, we're going to stand down. Thanks to some of our sponsors. We'll be back more with Director Boyles. I'm Don McDowell. Stay with us.
Yeah. All right, boys, follow me. Mostly in A. Stay with me now. Listen up. This is Phyllis.
All righty, we're back visiting with Director Boyles from you got it, azgfd.gov. I want to thank you also. I know you weren't personally responsible, but I always appreciate a good recommendation right before the big game tag draw. I got 4 deer tags this year for myself, my brother, my son, and my oldest grandson. So,
well, I'd like to know who you really should thank, because whoever that is, I'm not going to thank them. I didn't get drawn for anything.
Ooh.
So we need to have a talk. I want to know who can do that.
Oh, boy, yeah. I kept getting elk tag after elk tag after elk tag, and Larry Riley was sitting right there. And I really kind of messed up because, well, he's not a really tall guy, let's say. So we put a couple of phone books on his seat so he could reach the microphone. And after that, my elk tags were like 6-7 years in between. So I'm just saying.
Well, maybe that's the man to talk to. I don't know, but
yeah.
Obviously, I love you, Don, but I would have put you in line behind me if I could have.
Yeah, I know you would, Director. Good stuff. We've got what I'm going to term a environmental mafia comprised of Center for Biological Diversity and the like, and I'm going to leave it there. Apparently, they drive like they drive Subarus, Volvos, wear Birkenstocks, and slurp Starbucks on a regular basis. And really don't put anything into the environment other than litigation and cost us an awful lot of money, time, and effort. Are either one of your groups engaged with fighting these guys?
Our groups are very engaged in looking into the challenges of litigation and how it affects our ability to do conservation. One of the problems we've got, society's confused those two terms. To litigate and to conserve are not the same thing. Litigation takes place in the courtroom. I've never seen a species recovered in a courtroom.
Never.
I've never seen a bighorn sheep in the courtroom. I've never seen a spotted owl in a courtroom. If you're going to do conservation, conserve is a verb, and it means action out on the ground to take care of our wildlife. And certainly there's a place for managing the legal structures, and I understand why there's a role of the courts, but that role of the courts has to be in balance also. So, yes, that's the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies has stood up a new initiative where we are starting a legal strategy. The association's been very active on the Hill working with Congress and the legislative branch of government. They've been very active working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, Forest Service, and others in the administrative branch of government. We're going to get more actively involved in working through the judiciary also, because any laws you pass, any agreements you reach can only stand the test of time if they get upheld in a court. So we're looking at being much more involved in that third branch of government where things get decided in the final determination.
We know where we are today, sitting here, fourth quarter of 2014. Director, what's your vision? Where are we going to be this time next year? Are we going to have any successes? Are we still going to be fighting the same old fight? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, these aren't things that are solved in 1 year. I will tell you, are we going to be fighting the same old fight? Yes.
Well, let me interrupt you and point out one thing. We've been fighting this wolf issue for a couple of decades now, and we're no closer to a solution or an agreement or a compromise. My best guess is November 28th or January 15th, whatever those two dates mean to the DEIS. The whole thing starts all over again.
Yes, I agree with you, but you got to remember that conservation is something you look at in decadal scales. You look at in terms of generations. You say we'll be fighting the same old fights. I would argue that we've not been really fully organized in fighting the fights. I think I see more integration of sportsmen with their congressmen, with their political decision makers than they've ever been. I see our voice beginning to be more collective. As you pointed out earlier, I work a lot on the national scale. One group I work with is what we call the Agency Industry Coalition, which is a coalition of conservation-related industries with the agencies. They are recognizing that the story of how conservation gets done in America needs to be told. They are recognizing that needs to be part of a broader campaign, and that it also needs to relate to how we manage our legislative process and our litigation processes. So I see people organizing in a different way. Are we going to be fighting the same old fights at the end of this year? I think we will be. Are we going to be fighting them the same way we've done for the past 20 years? I don't think so.
Good. That's kind of where I'm headed with my thought.
Yep. I think I see more and more people coming together in an effort to save this conservation system that is the best in the world. And that changes the game. When we begin to work together and people begin to recognize how we got this biodiversity that we love. We were close to losing that biodiversity at the turn of the last century. And a system of conservation was built that brought much of it back. And we can't turn our back on that system. We need to foster that system, and we need to pull together to remember that litigate is a verb in the courtroom, conserve's a verb out on the ground. And that's where it needs to be.
Well put. What's the biggest issue in your mind for 2015 on the conservation and wildlife front?
To me, the biggest issue, Obviously, how we as a burgeoning population manage and relate to our natural resources is a huge issue. But the other issue is how we come together on a vision for conservation. And in Arizona, we need to develop a state vision for what we want our wildlife future to be. We do that, then we can move mountains. And I think that's where we need to be.
Is the ability under ESA Section 6 part of your vision to take back some of the wildlife management and conservation ability and put it back on the department?
Under Section 6, Section 6 is the only portion of the ESA that I know of that there's been no definitive rules promulgated under. That is the section of the ESA that talks about the cooperation and coordination and relationship between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the states. I believe that there's a lot of ground to be gained if we begin to develop those relationships that re-empower the states in how we do the conservation under the ESA, rather than it being invested in a federal entity that has limited resources to deliver on the ground.
Now, are we going to go over and shake hands with those folks and come to an agreement, sing Kumbaya? Or are we going to get our new governor and AG and commission involved in that particular relationship?
We're going to need to involve all levels of our representational government. It's not a simple matter of a handshake and a kumbaya. This is going to be a process.
We've had a number of the local politicians, some that have won and some that didn't do quite so well, let's say. And I think the message that we've tried to send out to the sportsman community and our listeners, that they in fact are entrepreneurs. They hire, if you will, these what we're going to call representatives to go to Washington, to go to the legislature and to do this and do that for them. As a voting block, we're sitting here with round numbers, 800,000 hunters and fishermen in the state, roughly?
Pretty close to that.
About that. That's a huge voting block.
Absolutely.
And I'm seeing, through the, we're out on the field quite a bit, going to all these different various meetings, all the way from Flagstaff, Show Low down to Tucson to Yuma and here and there. And as compared to years past, I'm seeing a lot more cohesion within the outdoor community. That's not saying they're still not arguing about a point, but I think you're right. I see them coming together and more of a unified front, trying to put their foot down and say, okay, now we've had just about enough of this.
Well, I see the exact same thing. I see more integration of people that are hunters, anglers, conservation, what I call the active conservation community across the nation, not just in Arizona, but across the nation. They've got more focus than they've ever had before, and they're understanding that we all have a common destiny. And I think that's changing the dynamic. And the question you raised earlier, are we going to be fighting the same old fight? Well, we may be fighting the same old fight, but it won't be in the same way. There's a lot more integration across our nation now of hunters and anglers and conservation effort.
Military calls it shoot, move, and adjust fire.
Absolutely.
All righty.
Shake, Rattle, and Troll, brought to you by Bill Luke Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and Ram. I-17 and Camelback Road since 1927.
Yeah, we got the power, we got the speed. We're running wide open on a midsummer breeze. Freshwater, saltwater, watch out, boys. Bass Daddy Don's gonna make some noise. It's me and the boys gonna shake, rattle, and
Now, here's your host, saltwater fisherman, the man that fears no fish, Bass Daddy and Tournament Pro, John McDowell.
Hey, thanks for joining the second hour of Shake, Rattle, and Troll. We have Director Larry Boyle from the Arizona Department of Game and Fish in the studio. Glad to have the director. We're learning a lot of stuff that the director does. How do you get it all done, Director? I know there's only 80 hours to work in a week.
Well, you asked if I was going to bring my wife to the studio today, and I did. And
Good call.
I would suggest that probably 90% of it, what it takes to keep me going, is getting done by her.
With the hall pass?
She's been awfully forgiving of my travel, but she's also been pretty good about keeping my bags packed. She makes my doctor's appointments and things and says, Larry, you're going to be here, there, when, and she coordinates with my admin assistant, Nancy, and between the two of them, it's amazing what they can do to keep me on the go.
You're a kept man.
I would say so.
All right, let's talk about some fun stuff. Usually what we're talking about this part of the show is the saltwater side of life over at H&M Landing in downtown San Diego, where the weather's always nice. The tuna are still here. The guys have just quit going fishing, which is, I'm not tracking on this. The Malahini boat yesterday had, between the two, there was two 3/4 day boats out, 42 anglers. They're still catching yellowtail. It's Thanksgiving. They're still catching yellowtail.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I think we're going to have, overall, this is probably one of the best seasons that they've had in probably 15 years. They've had some pretty poor ones, guys losing boats, getting boats repossessed, doing some other stuff. It's been bad, but that's a good indicator. We're trying to correlate and track with the boys up at NOAA. The weather patterns, the jet stream this past week took a severe dip, and the currents are starting to swing away from the coast. And as you know, those migratory tuna like to follow that particular current. They get up to the Oregon coast, the bluefin and the albacore, and then for some reason they make a fatal mistake. They turn left and go to Japan. Yeah, what's on your plate? Sushi. Good stuff. Out of all of this, over the last 40 years, becoming involved in the game and fish department, is it a safe statement to say that you've been able to hunt and fish more or less?
By being with the agency?
Yeah.
I think it's a safe statement that it's, my dad tried to talk me into being a dentist, and I'd have probably gotten to hunt and fish more if I'd done that, to tell you the truth. Well, but I've been able to live, with wildlife and live in the outdoors. And, so how much time did I get to spend out in hunting season? Sometimes that got impinged on, but I've been able to live a pretty good life. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Getting your shots in, so to speak.
There you go.
Well, you've made your dad proud, because doing what you do is like pulling teeth anyway. So he's a happy guy.
I'll pass that on.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff. Doing what you do is not easy. I can tell you about 1998, I took a conservation position because nobody else would do it. I said, oh, hell, I can do that. I didn't get it. I didn't get it for about 3 or 4 years, and then as you start getting into it, and in Noreen Clow, we talked about Noreen Clow from BASS, has some health issues that are pretty grim at this point. But Noreen was a catalyst to keep a foot in my backside on fish, conservation, land access, and some of the other things that she was involved in. And then when you start looking around on the landscape and see how many people don't want us on the landscape, hunting, fishing, doing other things, recreating in the outdoors, it becomes a passion. And over the course of my life, right now I'm chairing the FLW conservation side, the BASS side, and a number of hunting groups, as well as one military group. And like you say, if you don't have somebody there keeping your schedule and keeping you oriented, and it's I think one of the biggest things is keeping focused. Understanding that the things that you and I are involved in today will not be solved in my lifetime. Hopefully yours. But, we've got long-term battles. It's like these dadgum gizzard shad. I mean, a gizzard shad, it's part of the herring family. Why do we have them in the desert? I found 1,101 recipes for the gizzard shad, and none of them are palatable. So, what are we going to do with them? We've got an awful lot of national and congressional and senatorial issues on the Willow Beach. I know Cantrell and DeVos and yourselves and in fact, probably most everybody on the upper echelon of the department has got a hand in this Willow Beach deal. Where are we? What's the prognosis for keeping the hatchery open?
I think I'm guardedly optimistic right now. And this is one of those issues where I think really highlighted that the historic relationship between U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the State Wildlife Agency, where we work together for conservation. Willow Beach, its intake pipes were damaged, and they lost some fish as a result, and they were looking at closing that hatchery. Right now, we're in discussions with the service. We think that we may have a pathway forward to helping find some funding and financing to be able to do those repairs, hopefully in a very expedited way that will enable us to open that hatchery sooner rather than later. There's still some things to be worked out. One is, we need a long-term commitment to maintain that as a sport fish hatchery, as well as, any other fish they want to raise in the native fish realm. But maintaining that trout fishery is critical to us. Sport fishing is vital to Arizona's economy. It provides about $1.47 billion in annual
That's with
spending.
a B.
That's with a B.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And so we're partners in a conservation effort, we're partners in a recreation effort, but we're partners in an economic stimulus for the state also. And the service has expressed some interest in working with us to get that open. I think I've been in discussions with the director of Fish and Wildlife Service, and we've
That would be Dan Ash?
That would be Dan Ash. We've agreed on the conceptual points, and we're trying to hammer out the details of a relationship now in a formal written agreement. And part of that would be that we want to be able to maintain an existing agreement where we receive 2 million triploid rainbow trout eggs from their Ennis National Fish Hatchery. And we're trying to keep a commitment to the maintenance of the Willow Beach hatchery for trout, and a commitment to coordinate with the state regarding annual work plans for developing fisheries and aquatic conservation in Arizona. We bring those all together. I think we're going to be in pretty good shape for being able to stand that hatchery back up.
Any idea when that's the handshake's going to occur, or when the written agreement is going to be inked?
I'm hoping that we have something iced down, either by the end of the year or within the first quarter of the coming year. We're trying to move fast on this, and like I say, Director Ash and I have had some good conversations, and I think we've got some conceptual agreement. We've had great support from our congressional delegation. John McCain, Senator McCain, has been absolutely a stalwart in this effort too, and so as has the Board of Supervisors and folks in Mojave County.
Really good stuff. Sounds like we're getting back to it takes a village to. Run a hatchery.
It absolutely takes a village, but we've got the village.
Good deal. We'll hold that thought a little bit more on the hatchery, and then we're going to move into some other areas, maybe on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. I'm Don McDowell with Director Larry Boyles. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.
Called Catfish Land. She yelled at me and said, "Get up, son, come along with me and let's have some fun." I grabbed my britches and along came Cole, headed for the red-hot catfish hole. Catfish, boogie, woogie, boogie, woogie, boogie, woogie.
Catfish Boogie. There you go, Director. I don't know who that's pointed at, but I really don't target catfish.
Yeah, but we're both sitting here in a room, and they're talking about going out and hitting the water, so maybe they're targeting us both.
You know what? Yeah, I think the fisheries branch has done just an outstanding job on resurrecting Apache Lake. That lake has bounced back in just a stellar manner. I would think in the next couple of years we're going to have probably as good a fishery as it ever has been. We're hoping to see the smallmouth come back in size and in quantity like we had before the fish kill. But having fished there yesterday, I caught one species of everything in the lake except a catfish. The yellow bass was like on steroids. There's at least 2 tacos there waiting this evening, so it's a good thing.
Very good.
Let's kind of move into some new territory that's sparked a lot of interest. Most everybody that listens to Shake, Rattle, and Troll has heard my views on the Mexican gray wolf issue and the environmental mafia trying to do their part to make sure we have wolves in Green Valley Park and other urban parks in Maricopa County. We have seemingly a rogue wolf traipsing around the Grand Canyon North Rim in the Kaibab area. Can you fill us in on that?
Well, we still don't have a lot of definitive information. We've got a wolf-like animal that was spotted by a turkey hunter a few weeks ago and reported. We've had some photos taken. We've analyzed those. The animal doesn't appear, it's not likely that it's a Mexican wolf. So it appears that it's either a wolf-dog hybrid or possibly a Northern Rockies gray wolf.
Rumor has it this guy's about 100-pound class or bigger?
Or bigger. He's, I actually got to see the animal alive. It's a pretty good-sized animal. I would say it's larger than I would expect to see in a Mexican wolf.
Oops.
So it's like I say, we think it's either a wolf-dog hybrid or possibly a Northern Rockies gray wolf. It's a good-sized animal.
And this animal supposedly is collared. Is that correct?
It has a collar on. It appears that it's probably a telemetry collar, but we don't know that for certain. But from the pictures, we really think that's what.
Well, it's interesting. The rumors. How the rumors are in the hunting and fishing industry. My 6-pound fish that I caught yesterday was actually a 3-pound fish, but by the time we got back to Phoenix, it's 6-pound, and the chain of gossip that goes on. We initially heard there was one kind of a blackish gray wolf, and then there was another rusty colored wolf. Are we dealing with one animal or multiple at this point?
I only know for sure about one. I can't really say that. I wouldn't rule anything out, but I have not seen anything definitive that would indicate anything else right now.
Okay, so we're going to boil it down to one animal. What's the next step with this guy?
Well, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has sent a person out there to attempt to take possession of the animal and through trapping effort. He's been out on the ground for a while, has not been successful. They did have to work through the permit process because if it is a Northern Rockies animal, it's fully endangered, and Fish and Wildlife Service even needs to permit themselves before they can take and handle an animal under the Endangered Species Act. And our program's been built up around the Mexican wolf program, so none of the agreements and permits or anything are in place for a Northern Rockies animal. So they've done that permitting for themselves, and they're out there attempting to capture the animal, examine it, assess its health, take blood samples, and take DNA samples to determine what it is. And my understanding is that the service has collected scat for DNA sampling, but I don't think there's been any results come back from that.
Yeah. What's the time frame on that testing? Have any idea?
I don't know. It a lot depends probably on where the priority is in their federal laboratory. And
is the department going to be involved in this testing, or
we've asked for a sample to test independently, and so that's our intent would be for us to conduct some testing.
Interesting. Just briefly on the wolf issue, the Mexican gray wolf issue. Any updates on that at this point?
Well, as you know, we've been in discussions with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service since they released their draft 10J rule. Mexican wolf, I think, as probably most of your listenership knows, is managed under a special rule that allows for a balance of interests and allows more active management than would be ordinarily allowed under the Endangered Species Act. They released a 10J rule, a draft of a new 10J rule on July 25th. They expect to release their record of decision probably around January 12th.
Wasn't there something coming out mid-November?
Yeah, November 28th.
28th, yeah.
Their final environmental impact statement and 10J rule would be released to the public, and then their decision would be made around January 12th. And the department's been deeply engaged. We've had some significant concerns with the original draft that was released. It had no cap on the maximum number of wolves. The department's been a supporter of wolf conservation. We've done a lot of work on the wolf, but we've been a strong proponent of balance. We feel that our deer and elk populations, our native wildlife populations, need to be a primary interest also and need to be protected. And we think that can be done if we seek a balanced approach. But having no limits on how many wolves we'd have, we don't think is a way to get balance. We need to make sure that the 10J rule provides for the ability for us to do wildlife conservation and management actions that are difficult to do under the ESA without a 10J rule. We felt that original 10J draft that was released was lacking in that regard. And we felt that rule should put some definition on the level of impacts that could occur to Arizona's native wildlife, and also provide for a means to limit the level of impacts to people who live on the landscape, ranchers, etc. So we're fighting for that balance in the process, and we're hoping that what we see come out at the end of November will be more balanced than the original.
Has New Mexico re-engaged and is now partnering with the department?
We're in discussions with New Mexico, but New Mexico has really chosen a pathway of not engaging, and it's a difficult challenge because it is such a hot button issue.
Oh boy!
If you wade in, you're going to be damned if you do and damned if you don't type of situation. And
yeah, so, it seems like if looking at the process, if you don't engage, you will get whatever they want to give you.
Well, the old adage is you're either at the table or you're for dinner.
Nice.
And,
I like that.
We chose not to be for dinner. We chose to be at the table.
Outstanding. Yeah, that's. I have to remember that. It's always good to be at the table. Bottom line. All right, we're going to kind of stand down on this. All great information. Really glad you're sharing some of this from the top. When we come back, as always, we're going to have our Rim Country Fishing Report with our master rod builder, James Guggenauer, and I'm sure James is going to have some questions for the director, like what's in your tackle box. We'll be right back.
Well, the morning's kind of damp. I'm not worried about cutting the grass. Left my truck at the boat ramp and my boat is full of gas. My old boss thinks I'm sick today. He won't have me to harass, 'cause I'm out here on the river and he can kiss my big old bass. Kiss my bass.
You gotta love it, director. That only means one thing. James Guggenauer, our master rod builder from downtown Payson. What are you doing, Brother James?
Hey, good morning, Don. How are you today?
I'm well. We're blessed to have the commissioner down here enlightening us on just a number of things.
Yes, I've been listening online through the Shake, Rattle, and Troll website. Very informative. Appreciate the director's input and thoughts on different topics, especially on the wolf topic.
There'll be a film at 11.
Yeah, naturally, like you're saying, the Mexican gray wolf is a big concern to a lot of people here in Rim Country. And, seems like we've been fighting this struggle for years, and maybe we'll get some type of, at least a compromise going forward.
Yeah, I'm sure. We got some information coming out in December, and then a final determination in January. But hey, I was over on Apache yesterday. Awesome lake. What's happening on the Roosevelt?
Hey, you'll be disappointed with Roosevelt compared to Apache, at least on the size of fish. But fishing on Roosevelt was called good this past week by our experienced anglers. Now, here's some really good information coming from some of our professional bass fishermen up here. The bass continue to feed heavily this time of year because they're getting ready for the winter months. Then they're schooling up and they're pushing shad to the surface. But at the same time, the bass are pushing the bait to the surface. The birds, like the herons, the grebes, and the gulls, they're diving on them as they get to the surface. Now, that's something that's just happened within the last week or 10 days down at Roosevelt. So we're telling people that if you're fishing any of the Salt River chain of lakes this week and you see the birds diving on schools of bait, you want to get over there and as quickly as you can get a crankbait or a casting spoon onto the edges of the action where the school is. So,
James, that's just like hunting tuna.
Yes, it is. But on the edge, why that's important, Don, I know you know this, but for the listening audience, the bass and even the birds, they'll try to separate a small group of shad from the main portion of the ball. And they attack the edges of it more than right through the center. So if you see those birds and you see the school of shad on the surface, be on the outer edge of that. That's where you want to have the most action.
Okay. I think we weighed the winning sack of fish, 5-fish limit on Apache yesterday was sneaking up on 24 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say enough. And we've said this over and over again that, the Game and Fish Department gets a lot of credit for the fishing that's going on in Apache and Canyon right now. And we're sure hoping that Roosevelt can get back to those kinds of levels too. And speaking of that, I spoke with Branch Fishery Chief Cantrell this week. Our next Tonto Basin Roundtable meeting is now scheduled for December 18th. And this is the topic of the gizzard shad in Roosevelt Lake and the next steps to go forward.
What was the date again?
December 18th.
Okay.
It's 6 o'clock in Tonto Basin. And Chris is going to be able to tell us about the going forward plan. We're hoping to do some more stocking of the Florida strain into Roosevelt next spring, so we hope we can get some updates on that.
Well, the department between Cantrell, Curtis Gill, and Dave Weedman, they're way ahead of schedule at this point.
They are. I think we've talked before on your show about the schedule that we put together, kind of an overall grand plan to get these things done. There's over like 160 line items on this schedule, And you're right, there's several activities that the Game and Fish is responsible for that are ahead of plan. Others are behind, and we're working to get those caught up so this can all come together at some point.
Yep, good stuff. Well, we'll see you there. Any news on the northern lakes? Are they starting to freeze over yet?
No. And as a matter of fact, we're telling people that, now that the water's cooling down, long-time trout anglers know that this is the time to go up and do some trout fishing on the rim. It's just like you're saying, the anglers quit going saltwater fishing. They have quit going up on the rim. But the guys that are going up there, they're finding great fishing out there. And so you got to get there before the snow, but as that water gets colder, the trout actually like that better. And there's some pretty good-sized trout that are being caught on most of the rim lakes and especially on the reservation lakes up there.
How long are you going to have stockings from the department on Green Valley Lake?
Green Valley Lake, every other week. And they actually start in Green Valley is the first one to get stocked every year in the August time frame because we're a little cooler than some of the valley lakes. But that'll go through till May of next year. And there is always a huge crowd down at Green Valley Lake. That community fishing program to a small community like Payson is an absolute big deal. You see more kids with their parents or grandparents down there getting instructions on fishing and casting, and it's a good program.
Well, every year we come up there for the wildlife fair, and I always see Cameron Davis sitting out on his porch flipping power bait. So, yeah, I get it.
He's got a bird's eye view of what goes on down there.
It's all good. What else have you have to add for us?
Hey, one update on the crappie fishing, because we've been struggling for a couple of years with crappie on Roosevelt, but this is a time of year that the crappie school up into big numbers, and we're starting to see that come together. Rather than catching 2 or 3 crappie off of a bush and then having to move to another piece of structure to catch some more, you can stay longer at a certain spot now. So that tells us that the crappie are getting in bigger numbers and getting together. The problem is most of them are only about the size of your hand. I don't hear any reports coming in of anybody catching, good 1.5 pound kind of crappie down there. But the ones that are being caught are in 25 to 30 feet of water. Most guys are still vertical fishing. There are a few crappie fishermen that are trolling, but the majority are vertical fishing right over structure or cover and fishing grub tails, 2-inch grub tails. And it was kind of strange. We usually, when the water's clear, more of a John Deere, like a green and yellow type grub. But this past week, black, blue, and chartreuse was the color that 3 different crappie anglers told me that they were catching them on.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty good to me. And, the fishing, again, Apache was just, like most tournaments, there were some that caught a few fish, and some guys, director, somebody's always on fish.
And it's about 7% that catch about 90%.
Yesterday, that probably was good. John Murray was up there wandering around with a 14-pound bag of fish, so I'll have to look at the results.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, James, you have a blessed rest of the day, and we will talk to you next week. Good report.
Thank you, Don. And once again, Commissioner Boyles, we appreciate the information.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here for sure.
Director Boyles, I'm sorry.
That works.
Would you want to be a commissioner?
I like being paid.
Nice. All right, that kind of says it all. You got any final questions for Director Jim?
No, one question. I know you were talking about the wolf in the Grand Canyon. What about that one that was trapped in Flagstaff? Did they ever make any final determinations on what that was?
Yeah, we ascertained that was a hybrid. It's not It's not a Mexican wolf or
Yeah,
Northern
rumor
Rockies
has it
hybrid.
the dog catcher caught him, put him in a compound, and he escaped. They had to go catch him again.
Yeah, and we've got a secure facility for him.
Yeah, my neighbor had a wolf hybrid. Loved Tommy to death. Loved to fishing with him, but I was really glad he moved and took his dog with him.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Yeah, James. Scary
Okay,
stuff. All right, we'll talk to you next week. James really does a good job keeping track of what's going on. He's a big catalyst on the species of mass destruction that Roosevelt has on the gizzard shad. But I have to tell you, if we haven't seen you over at the roundtable meeting and rightly so with your schedule. But I have to tell you, between Cantrell, Dave Weedman, and Curtis Gill, those guys are on it. And they're bold enough to sit in a room with 60 pissed off fishermen, 60 or 70. And it was interesting. The first meeting they had was around happy hour. So now we have the meetings before happy hour, and the meetings are a lot shorter and less confrontational.
But we know how you really feel during happy hour, don't we?
Oh, buddy, let me tell you. Yeah, 6 one way and a 12-pack the next. I get it. We're going to stand down. When we come back, we're going to close out the show with Director of Oils. I'm Don McDowell, and we will be back.
I don't remember loving you, and I don't recall the things you say you put me through. You tell me that you've had a guilty conscience for so long. You say that you walked out on me.
Director, I don't know why we have that music in closing, but love you, man. It's all good. We have a lot of fun here at Shake, Rattle, and Troll, and really put our best foot forward to support the department, the commission, and those that support the way we think primarily, which doesn't include the folks that go to Starbucks or wear Bergenstocks or drive Subarus all-wheel drive. So I want to thank you for coming down. Is there anything you want to throw out there that we haven't covered at this point?
Don, I really just want to thank you for letting me come on and spend some time with you here. And you've been, just an absolutely great supporter of conservation in the department along the way. And I'd like to encourage your listeners to think seriously about attending a meeting and participating with a sportsman's organization, a conservation sportsman's group. We've got a bunch of good ones, great ones here in this state. And the future of hunting, future of angling, future of conservation all depends on folks that'll get involved and be active. And all of these groups, there's usually a tiny handful of people that really invest themselves and make it happen on behalf of all of us. And it's a lot of work. The more folks that get engaged, the better it is. And we're kind of an independent bunch, those of us that hunt and fish. I kind of like to, we like those outdoors because we like our solitude and our time alone. But if we're going to hand this legacy down to our children and our grandchildren,
exactly,
being involved is important. So I'd like to encourage folks to find an organization that works for you and participate.
There's a lot of different venues out there. There's all kinds of fishing organizations that have youth groups. One of the fellows that I've learned an awful lot from is, and am a member of the Southwest Fur Harvesters. What a unique bunch of individuals. I spent a little bit of time up with Scott Corpin, the vice president, on a javelina hunt headquartered at his trapping camp. And I want to tell you what, I was educated on how to skin the skunk, fox at 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's just like, wow. And they have a rendezvous and really put a lot into kids. And it's really neat.
There's so much to learn, and there's so many folks that are ready to help you learn. But I want your listeners to know they don't have to skin a skunk to participate.
Absolutely. Director, I didn't either. Growing up in Flagstaff as a kid, you learn not to mess with skunks.
There you go.
The first day of 5th grade, was my first adventure with a box trap. My granddad was the senior sanitarian for Coconino County. Busy guy. Opening morning of the 5th grade, we had to divert. I was late. We had to go out by Fry Park and get rid of a skunk that was captured in the garage. I had instructions not to do that any further. So, I'm not allowed to have box traps. It's all good. Real seriously, we've got a legacy to hand down to our children. I'm pretty blessed. I have 5 grandkids of my own, and they're all little by little as their time comes getting involved in the outdoor. They were raised the same way I was. My kids were raised, and my 12-year-old oldest grandson is quite the hunter. Heck of an archer and a marksman. If you're a squirrel and he's got his Henry 22 lever action, you better get moving.
Yep.
Something's not going to grow back. Well, he's had elk tags, deer tags, and we're looking forward to. We've got my oldest granddaughter's going to one of Woody Farnsworth Outdoor Youth Unlimited, one of their hunting camps. And, Woody and those guys do really a great job. But, yeah, I mimic your statement. There's an awful lot of good groups to belong to. And the best thing you can do for the outdoors is get off the couch, go to a meeting, get involved, and engage in the process.
And everybody that does that loves it. They love being able to make a difference. And they do make a difference. And you can make a difference, too.
Well, I appreciate you coming down. What's on your travel agenda? What's the next big event you're covering?
My next, right around the corner, I'll be going up and visiting with the folks with the National Association of Sportsmen's Caucuses. It's a group of legislators from all over the country. The Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus is the biggest caucus on the Hill in Congress, and not every state, but I think the vast majority of states now have legislative sportsmen's caucuses in their states, and they try to further sportsmen's agendas in each and every state and look at the challenges coming forward. So we're going to visit with them about some of the challenges that the animal rights movement is presenting for conservation in America today, and what they can do within their states to ensure that conservation is healthy and viable for their children and grandchildren.
Good stuff. Where's that being held?
That's in Oregon, near Bend, Oregon. Yep. I'll take my feathers with me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Yeah, Oregon this time of year, it doesn't matter. It rains up there anyway, so it just happens to be a different month. Well, our hats off to you. We certainly enjoy working with the Arizona Game and Fish Department and all the chiefs that we get to interact with, and it's just an honor to be part of that process and be welcomed as the constituency and some of the things, because we don't always see eye to eye on an issue, and it's like you ask 4 anglers how to fish a crankbait, you're going to get 6 different opinions, and none of them are right. So it's just toss a coin and get out there and go do it is the only way to get the process done. We've got some challenges coming up, and I have to tell you, working alongside Jim DeVos and Ty Gray, Jim Hickle, he's big enough. He really has to carry a gun. What? Are you kidding me?
He could reach across the room and get you, couldn't he?
Oh, yeah, boy, that guy's like on a 5-foot reach. It's just really awesome. I think going into 2015, our vision is to hopefully bring some closure to some of the issues. I don't think that's possible, but with the Fish and Wildlife Service, but I'm anxious to see what Arizona does. Doug Ducey particularly. Hopefully, ideally, I'd like to see him come out swinging. But anytime you get a position like that, yourself, you're going to have to go through the process a little bit and learn how to be a governor, what to do as governor, and pick the fights you can win instead of just picking a fight just because. And I think with Bronovich and our commission and the horsepower that we have at the department, I think we're going to see some things starting to change next year. Because one of the things this year, November, we're looking at budget restraints again coming out of the White House, and hopefully we won't have a repeat in January, February like we did last year. Any thoughts on that, real quick?
You know, I'm thinking we won't see that. I could be surprised. But I'll tell you, we learned a lot of lessons from the last go around. I think we'll know better how to deal more effectively with it if it does come. There's some things I think we can take proactively as a state, and we'll be ready to do that if necessary.